Hello everyone, and welcome to this segment of our training module where we will talk about venting of the Trinity Lx. In the previous segment I discussed that the Trinity Lx from the 200 through to the 800 can be used either as a boiler or as a direct flow water heater. The venting that we'll discuss in this segment applies to either application, so it doesn't matter if you're installing it as a boiler or as a water heater, the venting is the same for both applications. This slide shows the configuration of the LX150 and 200. You'll see that both the fresh air intake and the exhaust are located on the top of the boiler. We suggest using a Fernco style coupling for the fresh air intake, and when using CPVC for your exhaust venting, you can insert your venting directly into the stainless steel flue outlet located at the top of the unit. The flue outlet adapter is equipped with a gear clamp and lined with a gasket to ensure a tight seal. You'll also notice the use of a swing joint on the exhaust vent. The reason we recommend a swing joint, such as pictured here on this slide, is to ensure the venting doesn't apply a strain or load on the flue outlet adapter. Because the horizontal portion of the venting needs to be sloped back to the boiler at a rate of 1/4 inch for every lineal foot, using only one 90-degree elbow at the top of the boiler would create a strain on the flue outlet adapter at the top of the boiler. To avoid this, use two elbows to allow you to achieve the proper pitch on your horizontal run while maintaining the venting coming off the top of the boiler completely vertical, making sure the two elbows are then glued to the piece of venting material connecting them. This slide shows the 150 and 200 again, except this time using PVC for the exhaust venting instead of CPVC. This is the common material used in the US and for some applications in Canada, and we want you to avoid inserting your PVC directly into the flue outlet as we're concerned about the ability of PVC to withstand the temperatures and clamping force long term. Instead, we have included a short piece of CPVC with the boiler and want you to insert that piece directly into the flue outlet adapter. And once that is in place, you can then couple from that into your normal PVC venting material for the rest of your exhaust venting. And remember, when going from CPVC to PVC, you'll require a universal or transition cement, which may be different from the normal PVC cement you are used to using. This slide displays the configuration of the venting for the 300 and 400. The same principles apply as discussed for the 150 and 200 in the previous slides, but the configuration is a little bit different. On these models, the fresh air intake comes in on the right-hand side of the unit, and the venting is 4-inch instead of 3-inch. This slide shows the fresh air intake with a T and a drain cap, which is the recommended configuration to allow for easy cleanout, and the Fernco style coupling connecting the fresh air is included with the boiler. Again, the use of a swing joint in the exhaust venting will ensure no additional strain is placed on the flue outlet adapter at the top of the boiler, and this slide also shows the use of CPVC as the vent material, so it can be inserted directly into the flue outlet without the piece of CPVC included with the unit. Again, we show the LX300 and 400, but this time using PVC. As before, when venting with PVC, use the piece of CPVC we include with the unit to insert into the flue outlet, then couple from there off to the rest of your PVC venting. Here we take a look at the 800, where the configuration is a little different again in that the exhaust comes off the back of the unit with 6-inch venting, and the fresh air comes into the left-hand side of the unit using 4-inch venting. Aside from those configuration differences, the same basic principles apply. CPVC transition piece to be used at the flue outlet when venting with PVC, and the use of a swing joint in the exhaust venting to ensure no additional strain is placed on the flue outlet. For the fresh air intake, the 800 comes with a stainless steel adapter, so a Fernco style coupling is not required. In terms of vent lengths, for the 150 and 200 the maximum length is 105 feet when using 3-inch vent material and natural gas. If the units are operating with LP, the maximum length is reduced to 50 feet, but can be increased back to 105 by going to 4-inch venting instead of 3-inch, and that is for each the intake and the exhaust. Each run is allowed to go up to the maximum length. It isn't the two of them combined. You vent the 300 and 400 with 4-inch to a maximum length of 100 feet using either natural gas or LP. And as for the 800, the exhaust vents with 6-inch and the fresh air intake uses 4-inch. Both the intake and the exhaust have a maximum length of 100 feet. And because elbows add restriction to the venting, we count each elbow as the equivalent of adding 5 feet of pipe, regardless of the type of elbow, whether it's a 45 or a 90. So any kind of elbow is counted the same as adding 5 feet of pipe when calculating the overall equivalent length. This slide shows the configuration options for the 150 and the 200 for sidewall venting, shown using either a 2-pipe termination or a concentric termination, either of which is fine for these models. Roof venting is also an option for the 150 and 200, again using either a 2-pipe termination or a concentric termination. When using sidewall venting on the 300 or 400, either a 2-pipe termination can be used, or the optional NTI sidewall termination kit that is available as a separately orderable part. Also acceptable for the 300 and 400 is doing a 2-pipe termination through the roof, which isn't shown on this slide. The 800 can also be sidewall vented using a 2-pipe termination or the optional sidewall termination kit. You can see in the picture that when using the termination kit, the 6-inch venting needs to be reduced to 4-inch at the termination kit. Another option for the 800 is to vent the exhaust to the outside through the sidewall or the roof and draw the combustion air from inside the room using the optional indoor combustion air kit. This is a separately orderable part from NTI and is only available for use on the LX800. It is important to ensure the proper clearances are maintained when using a 2-pipe termination. First of all, the fresh air intake needs to be at least 12 inches above your local snow allowance. The exhaust outlet needs to be a minimum of 18 inches above the fresh air intake, and the two need to be spaced a minimum of 4 inches horizontally from one another. If you space the intake and the exhaust more than 12 inches apart horizontally, you'll need to increase the 18 inches of vertical separation between them as well. For every inch greater than 12 inches they are spaced apart horizontally, you'll need to add an inch to the vertical separation. For example, if they're 18 inches apart horizontally, you'll need to add 6 more inches of vertical separation to the original 18 inches, so you need to make the exhaust 24 inches above the intake in that example. Regardless of how far apart you have them spaced horizontally, the vertical separation will never need to be more than 3 feet. There are several options on how to terminate the venting, and one that we've already covered is through the sidewall, but you can also terminate through the roof or through a vacant chimney. When terminating through a roof, the same clearances pertain in that the fresh air inlet must be at least 12 inches above snow allowance, and the exhaust needs to be 18 inches above the fresh air inlet. Also be sure to point the terminations away from the slope of the roof and ensure adequate flashing is used where the pipe enters the roof to prevent water leakage. Running the vent pipe through an existing chimney is okay as long as the chimney is not being used by any other appliances, flue gases don't enter the chimney, appropriate venting material is being used, and the vent lengths don't exceed the maximum specified. Also, when using a chimney, you need to make sure you install and seal a rain cap. And that concludes this section on venting for the LX. I hope you found this information helpful. And on behalf of everyone at NTI, thank you very much for your interest in our products.